Well, well, what has the cat dragged in today? It's a continuation of setting up the enemy AI. So in the last video, this is where we left things off at. The cone of vision does not detect that it's hitting a wall. If it hits the player, but there's something blocking vision, the player is not detected. But if the player is detected, as I should be across this small little barrier here, the AI stops moving. Taking a look at our state macro, this is what we have. We have our patrol state, which is where we start, in which we just simply, every frame, rotate around the up axis based on the rotation speed set on the game object. And then we have a transition set up. This is a bit more complicated, in which we're using the onTrigger enter event, verifying that we're looking at the player and not, say, a wall or something else. And if it's the player, we do a ray cast. And if that ray hits a player, then we trigger the transition into the chase state. And then the ray is calculated by, we set up a game object for the ray origin on the enemy, grabbing the player's location, adding an offset to it, subtracting it out to get a vector pointing from the ray origin to the player, and then that's how we build the ray for the raycast. Now what we need to take a look at is what happens when we enter the chase state. And actually, we'll be putting everything on the onEnter state here. There's actually nothing for us to do on update every frame, because how this works is we're going to use the navmesh agent set destination command. And once we set a destination on navmesh agent, we don't have to do anything per frame. We can just let it go. It will automatically navigate to the destination that it just got told to go to. So everything we're going to be doing here is going to be on the onEnter state. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set our animator float. Because I want that to be playing. Again, using a magic number here mainly to save time. So I'm going to set that vertical parameter in our animator to 1, so that way the run animation gets played. Next, I need to set where am I going to, which means we're actually going to have to take a step back to the previous. Because at this time, I don't know where the player is. Now, there's a couple of ways that we could approach this. I could remember the player's location from my previous actions, or I could calculate it out anew. We're going to remember it from previous actions because we'll do the calculate it from scratch version later on in the project. So I'm actually going to hop back up for a moment into my transition flow here. And upon verifying that, yes, this is actually the player, or even before then, I guess, if I really wanted to, I need to grab that location information, which is basically this guy right here. Actually, now that I think about it, just simply to save the fact that I don't want wires like freaking everywhere. So, yeah, see, this is the area where I really don't like visual scripting. It's like I don't want to have a wire all the way over here, but I'm going to have a wire all the way over there because it's ARG. Okay. We'll put it over here because it's more correct logically. So what I'm going to do is I have now determined that I have successfully detected the player. I'm going to chase the player, so let's remember the player's position. So I am going to set an object level variable. It's not that I need this one to be visible in the inspector, but I need it visible between multiple graphs. And this is the most convenient way of doing this. So I am going to set an object variable called player location. And I am going to set that to the player's position. So I get a wire stretched all the way across, well, the everything. And then I can go about my business for triggering the transition. Now I have the player's location. And before I forget, I'm going to go set that up in the object variable list. So let's get out of full screen, hop over to the enemy, come down here to my variable list. Where'd you go? There you are. Create a variable called player location and make it a vector 3. Okay. Back into Chase and back into full screen so we have some screen real estate. So I've told the animator to do its job. Now I have to tell the NavMesh agent to do its job. Now, I am paranoid. And also, I don't know whether or not this is the first time this has ever happened. So what I am going to do is I am going to reset my path very first thing. So navmeshagent.resetPath clears the current path. So if there is a path, it's wiped out. Next, I'm going to set my destination. So I'm not even going to bother typing the navmesh agent part because set destination, there's not too many things that actually have that. And so just typing in set destin is enough for the autocomplete to figure out, oh, did you mean navmeshagent.setDestination? Why, yes, I did in fact mean that. And here I can get the object level variable, which again, since I have this selected in my hierarchy, I actually get to see what my object level variables are. I can just yoink in the player location and feed that in. And that is all I have to do. Once I set that destination, based on the NavMesh agent properties, it's gonna go. So let's see that. I'm gonna hit the play button. Immediately run over here so it can see me. And it's going to run over to that spot. Now, one thing that can possibly cause a complication, although it shouldn't, the way we have things set up, is just like with the player, I could have sworn that I unchecked root motion, but yeah, we want to this root motion option, we want that off on both the player and the enemy as far as our animator controller, because that can cause us problems. We're not using root motion, so we do not want to have apply root motion checked. That has a very high risk of causing us problems. So again, going through and testing again, didn't get chased. Excellent. And the AI is able to navigate around the corner to catch me over there. Excellent. Now, how do we get back to the patrol state? Well, obviously, we're going to create a transition. So I am going to right-click, make transition, and click on patrol. So now I've got two icons. going back and forth. So I'm going to click on the new one that's got the wire going from chase to patrol. And what I want to do here is I want to hook into the reached destination event. So in other words, I didn't catch the player. On destination reached and events navigation. Threshold, require success. Both those default values are just fine. And that's honestly all we need to do. That's all we're concerned about in our transition back to the patrol state. Did we reach our destination? Oh, well, if we reached our destination, that means we didn't catch the player, so go back to patrolling. Functional piece of work, I'm gonna test it. Yep. Mostly. As you can see, he's still running, which is most definitely not what he should be doing. So let's... Yep, and doesn't matter how many times I trigger this, he'll move and then adjust his position accordingly. So how do we stop that? Well, let's go back into here. Remember, we also had an on-exit state. So when we enter the chase state, we set our animator float value to 1. We can do the same thing on when we exit this state. When we exit the chase state, let's go back to idling. So on exit, you know what? I'm just going to copy this set float. So Control-C, Control-V. Link that up. And instead of setting the value to 1, I'm going to set the value to 0. Test it. Another reason why I constantly test is it helps me find pain points in the game. If by playing through this again and again and again and again and again and again and you get the point, I start getting really freaking annoyed at a part of the game, that's a clue to me that I need to fix that, because a player, depending on the game, is going to spend hours, tens of hours, hundreds of hours playing my game. I don't want there to be pain points. And I can tell you that, yes, I am very thoroughly sick of tank controls, but that's a part of the design that I don't get to change. And so there we go. He's spinning in place. I get detected. He runs over and chases me, spins in place, detects me, chases me, spins in place. Make sure that he can't detect me through a wall. Yep, he cannot. Excellent. So now we have our patrol and our chase and the transitions back and forth between them working. Now, how do we transition to end game? There's actually transition from both patrol and chase that we want to hook up here. So I'm going to do patrol, right-click, make transition to end game, and chase, right-click, make transition to end game. Because this could happen either way. The player could be an idiot and run into the guard. That could trigger an end game condition from patrol. More likely that the player got to the chicken, which also stops the guards from patrolling. And in the case of chase, this, again, it could be either way. It could be that the AI was chasing the player, but the player managed to get to the chicken first. Or it could just simply mean that we caught the player. It doesn't matter. We want to stop. And again, this is going to be a scene variable. So we already have our scene variable set up, game running. Again, this is visible because I have my enemy selected in the hierarchy. And so what I'm going to do is just an update. Every frame, ask the question. Never be afraid of using update loops or the on update to do logic. Never worry about performance until it is proven that you need to worry about performance. So I'm going to go into lifecycle update. And so I am going to branch. What am I going to branch off of is the game running. And if that is false, not true in this case, but if it's false, I'm going to trigger the transition. I'm going to need all of this information, so I'm going to copy it. So I just highlighted it. You can either drag or control click, either way works. And then I'm going to go into the transition from chase to end game. Paste it in. Oops, I should have grabbed the on update too. I don't know why I didn't grab that. So now I get to go in. No, not control, events, lifecycle, update, excellent. Link that in, shorten that up, get rid of the extra one. And there we go. So now, regardless of what happens here, I'm going to get to my end game state. And I can test to see, oops, not by hitting the play button like that. I can test this. So here, I'm going to go into game, and I'm going to undo maximize on play because I want to play around with my scene variables. I'm going to position myself so that way I can more easily see the AI. I'm going to switch over here to scene variables, and I'm going to turn off game running. AI freezes, and can the player control? Nope, player cannot control. Turn game running back on. And player can control. The AI can't move anymore, but that's to be expected. I do not actually want to allow the AI to resume. When game running is turned off, that means the game is over. Victory or defeat. And with that, we are going to go ahead and end this video here. The next little bit that we're going to take a look at is determining how, catching the player or finding the chicken and the UI work that's going to go into displaying this information to the player, which would make this video a bit too long if we tried to cram all of that into this one. So that will be in the next video. As always, if you enjoyed this video and think you learned something new, a like would be appreciated. And if not, that's unfortunate. And, well, the dislike button is right next to it. Until next time.